and then they have all kinds of picks left to work with.
And as you can see, that here's the terms of that trade. They swap first-round picks, and then the Lions get a third-round pick, 66 overall, from the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs already have 2 other third-round picks that they got in the Jared Allen trade, so they traded Jared Allen away. They go ahead and get Glenn Dorsey with the pick that they had first round originally, and then Brandon Albert with that other pick that they got for Jared Allen, Charles Davis.
You know, guys, right away I'm thinking, and I know as Dion articulated so well, we have to wait a while before we know how a trade pans out. But my first sense said the Kansas City Chiefs have pulled off 2 steals already. Number 1, getting Glenn Dorsey at 5, and now able to get Brandon Albert. Have I made myself clear about how much I think that this might be the best offensive lineman in the draft, that down the road we might look back and say, boy, how Kansas City really accomplished this is amazing. And here's my last thought. Last year at this time, we were talking about the Cleveland Browns and the audacity that they showed in getting Joe Thomas at 3, trading back and getting Brady Quinn. All that still has to play out, especially the Brady Quinn part. We know Joe Thomas is a Pro Bowler, but what did the people in Cleveland think? Wow, this is terrific. Our organization is really going after it for us. All Kansas City has heard is we're rebuilding. Well, they're rebuilding pretty darn well with these first 2 picks.
Kansas City also got a third-round pick for that one, too.
Yeah, and also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, the fact that it's really easy to overlook a guard. We took Ben Grubbs last year fairly high, and because you covet the tackle, it's like overlooking a safety maybe on the defensive side of the ball. This is the kind of kid that you could look up, and he could be an 8-9 Pro Bowls. He could be a solid fixture at guard for 10, 12 years, and you know you're set inside. It could be a heck of a pick for them.
And think about it, also they've got more picks because they do need more offensive line help. And remember, the franchise is still Larry Johnson. And so what you want to do, now you fortified one component, but as Herm Edwards told me at the Combine, we got to continue to rebuild and rebuild. We got a lot of holes to fill, but I agree with you. They have really got off to a very fast start. Think about this. According to Mayock's board and many other boards, now you got 2 top 10 players on your draft team by yourself. That's pretty impressive what they're doing.
You know, if you think about last year, there was one player was missing, or that they missed when he retired, was Will Shields. They're trying to replace him. Last year, that running game struggled without Will Shields in the lineup. Now you put a Brandon Albert in there, a guy that what I love to see was a lineman pulling that knew how to work in space, that knew how to cover up a guy in space. Larry Johnson is going to have that with his downhill, bounce outside type of run ability, and a guy that he can rely on when he's in space to run that straight line, draw the defender to him, and put him on his back. I love the guy, his athleticism, and what he brings to the game. The thing about Kansas City is they can't go wrong. If you look at their organizations, they have more holes than Swiss cheese. They can fill them all. They have a lot of picks. This guy helped them fill one, a big one that is.
Hey, Herm and Carl are sitting there with the most poker chips to play with today. And they also, coincidentally, like you just said, have the most holes. They've done a great job so far. I think you'll see them continue to play with these picks. They need 2 corners. They need another offensive lineman. They have several needs that they're hoping to come out of this draft with 5 or 6 starters out of this rookie class this year.
So if they need 5 or 6 starters, you're talking about a 28th against the rush on defense. So last rushing offense, they've addressed both of those needs. But if they need starters out of this draft, they need time. Because this is not going to be a good team for a while. Because those guys, they may pay dividends up, maybe a little bit this year, but towards the next few years, that's when they really pay off.
Well, Dan, it's tracking on it. And you could get a draft tracker if you're a Kansas City Chief fan on the fact that there's a run on Brandons on that team. They already had Brandon Albert. Now they got Brandon Flowers, Mike Mayock.
If that 4.55 was a 4.45, he'd have been a top 10 pick. He's comfortable in press or man coverage. He's the best run support corner I've seen in 5 years. The question, of course, was the long speed. But I got to tell you guys, right now I'm loving Kansas City. Dorsey, Brandon Albert, and then this kid, Brandon Flowers, the most physical corner in the draft. Great feet, great change of direction, brings physicality to the defensive backfield, can step in day one and play nickel. I think the backup plan is he's also can play free safety. I'd line him up tomorrow at free safety and let him run the alley.
You know, with all those picks now, they're adding players to their team that's probably going to start this year.
Oh, yeah.
Get a lot of playing time. They'll probably get an A rating for their draft come Monday, but I think these guys are going to all be players, don't you?
Of course. I mean, I like Brandon Flowers. You got to understand, this guy has the ability. He plays prime time, and I like the fact that he's physical. And having a physical corner in KC is something that you like, something that you need. They feel the need. They lost Ty Law. Same kind of corner, just not as fast as when Ty Law first came out from Michigan.
Kansas City Chiefs have 2 of the next 4 picks, and they just used one of them on Jamal Charles, running back. Texas, worked for Priest Holmes in Kansas City. Now here's another Texas running back coming in to go alongside Larry Johnson.
It just keeps getting better for the Chiefs. Explosive, quick. He had 179-yard games against quality competition in his last 5 games. Downside, fumbles the ball too often, and he doesn't want to hit it between the tackles. Every instinct is to bounce it outside. But I'll tell you one thing, guys. Jamie, I know you want to get in here, pal. I've never seen a quicker guy on his pro day, and I'm not talking about a 40. I'm just talking about an ability to burst, accelerate, and make somebody miss.
Yeah, and to me, this is a board guy. This is a guy that's the best on your board. This guy is and some people had him going in the late first round. Here, you get a chance to grab a guy like this in the 3rd round. So it looks like Carl Peterson, Herm Edwards, they're holding and sticking to their board. If this guy is rated here and I can get him, I'm going to take him because I need depth, and more depth.
Another continuation of a great draft so far for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, don't forget, they still have 2 more picks coming up in this round.
We were away. The Chiefs chose Brad Cottom, the humongoid tight end out of Tennessee. And Patrick Sims, the defensive tackle from Auburn, was just selected by the Cincinnati Bengals. The Patriots are back on the clock right now, and we've been raving about the Chiefs draft so far, but I got to ask you guys, of all the holes they have to fill, defensive end obviously leaps to mind. Tight end?
Rich, it tells me they don't like the defensive ends that are next on the board. In other words, I mentioned Jeremy Thompson, but I also told you he was underproductive based on his physical skill set. Kenny Awebama from Iowa, another 4-3 stack and shed ed, underproductive. I think that tells you the Chiefs' value at a position of need wasn't there. They went elsewhere. Now, not to say they don't have a lot of other needs,
right,
but Tony Gonzalez is getting old, and they need a developmental tight end who can also play in line. And this kid's 6'7", 270. He needs to work on his blocking skills, but he's an inline tight end.
Mike, you hit on a key point about Tony Gonzalez, because I think we're at the point in the draft where teams begin drafting for the future, recognizing that certain players have a limited amount of time to play. And Tony Gonzalez would only like to play a couple of more seasons. At some point, the Chiefs are going to have to move on. Why not get in a guy like Brad Cottom at this point and begin to groom him for the future?
So the Kansas City Chiefs draft rolls on now with DeJuan Morgan, a safety out of NC State. What do you make of this pick, Mike?
Like it a lot. He's a guy that's played corner and safety. I think his best football's ahead of him. He's going to run in that 4.55 range. Very productive junior year at safety. He can flip his hips. He will tackle. The only question I had on tape is just understanding that he can learn some angles at that free safety position.
All right, now let us turn to Falcons.